Jenna won't be here. It's ridiculous. I
And
think she needs to be here. Yeah, I'll just let Hamish know.
Cool.
That's fine.
Let them know why too.
Yeah.
Because we're always pushing things out with Greater Wellington.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. If you could take your seats. Awesome. Cool, thank you. And apologies for the slightly late return back to the table for all of us. We will make sure to keep the breaks more tight in the next little round of breaks. If we need to have any more, let's see if we can get through the rest of these items before lunch. So 8.3, performance report for the period ending 31 March 2023. We've got Cheryl and Jing with us. So over to you, Cheryl. Just the left-hand side, yeah.
Is that it?
Oh, right-hand side.
Kia ora, everybody. The quarterly report for the 9 months so far this financial year is in front of you. We'll take it as the report has been read, but I do just want to make a comment. There is an error correction on point 8 of the cover report. 76% of projects are on track, not 83. And other than that, the recommendation is to accept or receive the report. So we'll take questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl. Any questions? Councillor Spires.
Thank you. Page 63 online, development of Ottawa Park, stage 2. There's a blowout of about triple the size of in the LTP. Just wondering if someone could
Yeah, we'll pass
explain.
that to Mike. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Councillor. Blowout might be a bit harsh, but where we are at the moment with that project is we're getting quantities of our prices in for stage 2. Those prices are coming in at around 300% of what we had anticipated. So we think this is something we need to bring back to councillors through the long-term plan. It feels like a gate, one of those gates or an off-ramp or on-ramp. So I guess we're just early signalling that there are some issues with that specific project that we're going to need to bring back to you for further decision through the long-term plan, councillor.
Community Board Member Simon Black.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I saw in one of the pages here that there is one of the things we're going to do behind Harvey Bowler at the back of Harvey Bowler and Oddtaki was just basically put grass there. Now that is really near the town centre there. I was wondering, is there any opportunities to actually spend a little bit of money and make that sort of like a usable space for rangatahi? Just a little bit more of an opportunity there.
Thanks, Simon. Mike?
Thanks, Community Board Member. The short answer is yes, but we have a lot more consultation and engagement to do before we determine what we're going to do with that part of the town centre. Obviously, this ties into the town centre work, which is kind of still in inception stage. So we spoke with this is at the back of the library you're talking about? Yeah. So we've decided in the short term, while we're having those discussions, let's just grass it. At least then people can use it for what they want to do. But there's definitely potential for better use of that whole space. But we haven't settled on our strategy yet for how we might actually use that, Simon.
Thanks, Simon. Mayor Holbrook.
Thank you. I'm looking at the capital spending on page 88. So I've got one particular question and then one general question. So strategic land purchase. The budget line has a nil figure attached to it so that the expenditure comes through as a variance. I thought we had a budget for strategic land purchases, in which case that wouldn't be a variance.
I think Jing's going to provide a response.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Mayor. So, yeah, the capital expenditure for land purchases, strategic land purchase, if you remember last year when we tabled an annual report, that was overspent, and a part of through the process of annual plan for the current financial year, that we said because we spent the budget last year, we couldn't spend it this year, so we had a zero strategic land purchase for this year. But through the council meetings, that there was a decision around we need to purchase those land purchases. It was a separate meeting, separate report that you all agreed that we're going to do the strategic land purchase. So we've actually done that. What we did in that paper is actually bring forward what was in future budgets into this current financial year. So it's sort of a timing issue, how we wanted to do strategic land purchase. There is there's specific on a strategic land purchase. Because when we did the annual plan, there was no budget. Just be in mind it is a separate to the housing one, so there are two different land purchase, and we had no budget to start with, but councils, you all agreed that we need to do some land purchase, and that was signed off, and we've done that, so that's what we're showing as a variance, so as overspend.
Yeah, that's a very clear answer. Thank you. So, in this annual plan, do we have a strategic land purchase? I'm just trying to remember. I should know. Do we have a? It's outside the scope of this report, so I'll take that offline.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. So
we'll take it offline though. But yeah.
Yeah, just a brief follow-up comment. I do think it's important that we retain our strategic land purchase budget, so that because that's the purpose of it being strategic and able to be nimble, so that it doesn't come through as a variance. But that's a conversation potentially for another time. There are, in addition to the one that Councillor Spires has identified, a number of variances, both positive and negative, in the capital spend table. And I'm wondering if we just need, in future, just a brief explanation around some of the more major ones within that. But I won't go into them right now.
Right. The reason there's no notes is here, and the majority of those bigger projects that has already mentioned in the top of the activity reports and the performance report, and where they've showed the clearly contents around why projects are delayed, why we overspend, why we underspend. So in the activity sections, you might see them.
Thanks for the questions and also those answers provided as well. Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, through the Mayor. So my first question is actually on page 30, bullet point 12. I just wanted some clarification on what the word adjusted satisfaction means. So the word adjusted is used a number of times in this report. Just what that actually means, please.
I think it's just the removal of those who didn't answer the question or those who are neutral to the question being posed.
So if that is the case, I'm just thinking about this because, like if someone else is reading that, they're potentially going to wonder, well, how they adjusted it, and there needs to be something clearer.
We've got Mark De Haast online. Kia ora, Mark.
Kia ora, everyone. Absolutely, Madam Chair, you are absolutely correct. The adjusted is just taking out the neutral. At the back end of Appendix 1, there's a little table which shows the neutral, satisfied and unsatisfied, and we did actually used to have a methodology statement saying what adjusted meant, so it should be there.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you very much. So my next question is on page 44. And I suppose this relates to a number of the pages. So it talks about how the annual measures aren't included. I understand why, but I'm sure that they are being monitored and behind the scenes. But I am just wondering whether if there are any issues that they are actually identified on here, rather than so that's basically a no surprises approach, rather than actually being hit with something that's really occurred quite negatively or maybe positively, and we find out about it a year later?
Thank you for that question. Many of, or most of those ones that are annual measures, we don't monitor throughout the year. There's a few quite good examples. One is about crash data, for instance, on our roads. That's only updated once a year, so we can only report that result once a year. And there were quite a few of those.
Thank you for that. And I suppose there's probably a number of situations where it's not critical to actually do that, but there might be some in here that are important to monitor. I don't know.
If we can monitor them, we do. We are monitoring them, and we would make a comment in this report if we didn't feel that we were going to be able to make an annual measure by the end of the year.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Arnold.
So my last question's on page 80, and this relates to, just wait a minute, page, fat fingers. Yes, this relates to the not achieved status of the district planning process. And in here, so it's about developing policies and plans to encourage economic development, preserve character, blah, 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 et cetera, it actually, and you know, maybe there's reasons for it, but the problem is in here, it doesn't actually really say why this hasn't been met, other than it possibly wasn't actually asked in the survey.
Yes, that is correct. We no reasons were given for a lack of satisfaction for that, so we actually don't know why we didn't achieve it.
So if it wasn't a question, how can you actually say? How can you give a result then?
Thank you. That's a really good question, and I think we have been talking to you more generally about the residents' opinion survey and the fact that there is a good opportunity to refine some of the questions that we're asking to make sure that we're getting a clearer message back about things. And this would be one of the areas where it's quite broad. It could be that this reflects people's happiness or satisfaction, non-satisfaction with things like intensification. It could be that somebody who's responded is signalling dissatisfaction with roundabouts and Waikanae. We don't know. And I think this would be an area that we'd be coming back to you and saying if there's a specific thing that we want to understand, we need to be more specific about what that is. So at the moment, we can't really read into this.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate your comments in terms about potentially tweaking the survey, but I suppose previously when this is, matters have been raised about changing it, there's been some pushback saying that we don't want to change it because then it's not consistent over a number of years. It doesn't show the trends.
But I think, as Chris has mentioned, this is kind of part of a broader piece of work to kind of re-look at performance measures and then how we ask the right questions to assess our performance against those measures. So we're kind of looking at not necessarily just a tinkering around the edges with the survey wording, so to speak, but potentially a change in what those measures are. So
Okay,
thanks,
thank
Councillor Pravanov. Councillor Halliday.
Through the chair. Number 10 on page 3. It talks, I think it was about 15.6 million below budget from a capex spend as such. I guess my question was, I guess it's a bit of a clarity more than anything else, is that we were wanting to deliver X amount of things on, and we'd allowed quite a large budget for it. And I'm fair to say that we've got constraints with regards to supply and cost and everything. But does this also impact on just the sheer quantity or quantity of things we are delivering as well? I know there's been a lot of cost escalation. So are we deferring work into other years, or are we just not doing work, or there must have been a reason why we had page 30. Sorry, did I not say that? Oh, my apologies. I'm sorry, I didn't put a zero in.
Some
I'll
accounting.
wait a second. It's page 30, number 10. My apologies.
Yeah, I think it's been found, so we'll pass
Yep, no,
to
that's cool.
Jing.
So I know we had quite a high capex spend planned as such, and we're not going to meet that. I appreciate that through cost escalation, but are there actually, would it be a fair call to say that there will be projects that just no longer fit within that budget envelope as such, and what would potentially be happening with those?
We'll pass to the Chief Executive. Once his microphone comes on.
Thank you. Thanks. I'll start, and Sean might want to chip in. Yeah, so it's the ability to actually get things. The supply chains are still constrained. There are also reprioritisations that are happening around the country that are beyond our control. If I use this piece of work that's happening outside with the stormwater, we had to pre-purchase the pipes to ensure that we had them available to continue with the work. So there are those sorts of, I guess, constraints or restrictions or requirements being put upon us to ensure that we are able to maintain the big project work that we've got in front of us, which is a real struggle. And then, as you've touched on, price escalation. That's a really biggie. So the focus for us will be ensuring that we're able to maintain some sort of service and renewals in a budget envelope that we're able to live within. So the challenge for us in the coming long-term plan will be actually revaluing and looking at what it is that we can afford and what it is that we can deliver. To be ambitious is one thing, but to be realistic in how ambitious we are is probably the main thing, and affordability. You know, that will be big. I'm conscious of what's happening in the water reset and affordable water reforms, and what that might mean for our balance sheet, and then what will that allow us to do in delivering. But then the big opportunity, this is the exciting bit, is about reimagining what it is that we deliver. If we are no longer doing waters, what are the opportunities that we have here for Kapiti to be able to revitalise and just reimagine? So, Sean, did you want to chip in?
Thank you. Only, I guess, to add the comment around, yes, we are delivering less to some extent for more in terms of cost. So this project here is a good example where that one was significantly over budget, over our estimate in terms of budget and the budget line that we had. So, and this also links to the Mayor's comments around significant variances in the CapEx program for this year, where we've actively said, look, that contract came to council because it was in excess of $7-8 million, that we clarified through that process that we would actually overspend, but it would be offset by underspends in other areas. So, and as Darren's mentioned, part of the LTP process and some of next year's annual plan process we sort of talked about as well, is again in the context of what's deliverable, what's actually affordable, and what's likely to cost more, has advised next year's capital works program. But a wider conversation will definitely be around the LTP into the scale of what we need to deliver relative to how much that's likely to cost. We'd likely end up doing slightly less, but it probably won't make much difference in terms of the overall CapEx budget.
Thank you for those answers, really useful. Cool. Councillor Halliday, if you could just press your microphone off.
apologies.
Thank you. And sorry, Kim, we know that you're on Zoom. We'll come to you really shortly. Councillor or Deputy Mayor Kirby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've just got a question regarding the transport hub work. So the initial one is on page 45 of the report, which says that both costs and schedule are on track for the transport hub. Yet when you drop down to page 88, In the capital works, there is a substantial variance to budget up until the 31st of March, and also the forecast on that particular project. Could I have a clarification, I guess, on why we're saying in one place that costs are on track, yet we've budgeted less than what it's actually costing us?
Thank you, Lawrence. I'll pass to Sean to answer that.
Coming. Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. So that one counts as a good example of a specific project where there wasn't sufficient budget allowed for in the GL line, which is what we're reporting on in terms of the financial position, but the paper that came back to council to award the work was based on the actual cost to complete the work itself. So that's one of the issues I mentioned in terms of where we've actively made a decision to pursue and complete the work, knowing it's going to cost more, and allowed for that by offsetting underspends elsewhere in the capital program. But the way that we report it is we're reporting on the GL line that was published when you've got a slight variance in terms of the project now is the one that you were reporting on in terms of that, the commentary and the activity. So it's something that's come up over the years where we do have that variance. And again, the Amoria Street stormwater is another job where we're again offsetting the overspend by reallocating underspend capex. So we're actively looking at how we can improve that, both in the way we report it and how we can make that a bit clearer in terms of the actual projections for the year. So Mahara Gallery is another one where some of the funding was in the wrong financial year. So you'll see there's probably a commentary in there about the expenditure on that one, but we're actually on track in terms of the actual delivery against the project. So it's a combination of the financial reporting structure that we have balanced against the actual project delivery, and sometimes there can be a mismatch when we're trying to be a bit more flexible about delivery. So again, it's something we're trying to actively look at improving and how we bring it back to you.
Cool.
Okay, thank you for that answer. I would suggest that we probably need to make some comments around that in the report, because when public reads it, they're going to have probably similar questions. So
thanks. That's a good piece of feedback. Community board member.
Should we let Kim go first?
Oh, yep. Yep, Kim, over to you.
Kia ora. I'll just apologise first. When I spoke to the national policy statement, I referenced some measures from the performance report. So if it sounds like deja vu, it is. Anywho, my question was around, and it's in terms of construction. So when I look at page 82 and I see performance measures, processing of resource consents, and we're getting it done in record time or in good time, and then I hear comments in the public where contractors, choose not to take jobs that deal with the Kapiti Coast District Council because of the process and how long it takes. Disconnect, and I know there's been some real work done in the last couple of years into fine-tuning those processes, so it may be a timing thing, but there's still a very, very loud voice in the contracting sector that says that Kapiti Coast District Council is not very good when it comes to processing resource consents, and it's really hard and it's really time-consuming. So my question again was, when it says we're taking 17 days or however many days to complete them, is that we complete the resource consent and then the works can carry on, or is that then it goes into another process? So in real time, resource consents are actually taking 100 days, but we're just going, well, this section you have to do this, come back. This section you have to do this, come back, because it doesn't ring true with the comments that I hear on the ground in the construction sector. And I'm just thinking if we publish that, it's going to add to the frustration of actually, no, that's not what happens. So
yeah, kia ora, Kim. That's
yeah,
great question. I'll pass to James Jefferson on this one.
Just waiting to turn from green to red. Excuse me. Thank you. Through the chair, Kim. Thanks for your question. Look, it is complicated, and developing in Kapiti is complicated because of our land conditions. We have all of the natural hazards here, and it's imperative that the consenting team get the resource consent set up properly so that we have good growth and we don't experience some of the problems that we're seeing around the rest of the country. So look, that's my starting point. But you're absolutely right. We are committed to a process of continuous improvement and improving those. And as it's gotten a little bit quieter, we're using the downtime. There's no downtime because we're carrying vacancies, but we are really trying to work those processes up. The other thing I would say is 2 years ago when I came into regulatory, we started a process around improving the quality of applications. We're finding that quality of applications, both in resource consents and building consents, are really poor. And that's born out of it's complex legislation that we're dealing with in both areas, and consultants and developers are under pressure, even more so today with the downturn and works in the pipeline. So that's probably the second bit. And the third bit, Kim, to answer your question, when we issue the resource consent, of course, we get the opportunity to switch the clock off so that they can respond to further information requests. And then when we get those back and they're robust, we switch the clock back on. So, 20 working days or 18 working days is not a true end-to-end measure. The Act allows us to switch the clock off. But we issue the resource consent, and then you're absolutely right, then the fun begins, because that's when the developer starts with the detailed engineering design. And we have, in my time in local government, we've wrestled with, do we get that detailed engineering design up front? And the developers consistently say to us, well, no, there's no guarantee we'll get the consent in the way that we think we'll get it, so we don't want to spend the money on the detailed engineering design. So Kim, you're absolutely right. There is a whole lot of work that happens once we've issued the resource consent. It will have 20 or 30 conditions. Some of those will be the provision of detailed engineering designs that meet council's required standard. That's actually where the fun begins, and we do an arm wrestle with the development community. We do it because the team are absolutely committed to quality growth in Kapiti, and I don't mean quality. It's expensive. It is bloody expensive at the moment, but it's good. The legacy we're leaving is fit for purpose. So I hope that helps. I'd be more than happy to come and talk with iwi on that. I've just committed to going up to the community board and having a chat around some of those things. Look, it's a great opportunity for us to share the challenges, but we're absolutely committed to working with the development community to streamline as much as we can, notwithstanding it's pretty complex stuff at times. I hope that helps.
Yeah, kia ora,
Yeah,
James.
it does.
I think Darren's just got something I think he wants to add, the Chief Executive, and then we'll pass back to you, Kim.
Thank you. Thanks, James. Hey, it's regulatory is a challenging space. We're often, our feet are held to the fire. But the thing that gives me comfort at the end of the day is that we can stand there and justify the decisions that we're making, because when something goes wrong, they come back to us and we are held liable. And that's us as a council. The 21 days with resource consents, it may look like it's a little push at times. I'm aware of places where you're out to 100 days. And I've worked at some places where they are out to 100 days. So we are doing a pretty good job here. And the people the teams are trying to work with the developers who at times do push the envelope. I think that's something that we can all agree on. But it's finding the balance. And part of what we will be discussing as we work through our vision and the priorities is the balance or the complement of values and legislation. That will be a nice smoothing approach for us. So let's see how we travel, and of course during the long-term plan we'll have an opportunity to discuss these measures.
Kia ora, Darren. Kim, did you have any other questions?
Yeah, I did, and but I just want to wrap up that comment. I understand everything that you said, and I do understand that it's complex, and every development is quite complex in itself. Um, my point of raising it is that for Joe Blogs down the street reading this, that's what their mind will go to. Actually, this doesn't take 20 days, not understanding the different steps. So I just wonder if it's worth actually fleshing that out a bit. I don't know how you would do it. You're the experts, but there's, if you're going to read it, you'll read that, and I can guarantee you 10 builders that I could ask that, and they would just say that's not true. And in fact, it is. It is a good measure, and for what it measures, it's perfect. But it's just that perception of how long things take to actually get going, and understanding that that is a whole nother process. My second question was, it was around the satisfaction of the libraries, and I'm mindful that we were discussing Waikanae Library the other day, and the options for that, with all the bells and whistles. And then I read the report, and it says that actually we've got 97% satisfaction with libraries already. And so I think to myself, we're about to plunge all this money into a library, effectively, when our satisfaction rating is already 97%. How much higher can we get it? And I, and I just asked well, we can, yeah. But I just asked myself from a community perspective, if I'm seeing, libraries 97%, yeah, that's pretty good. And then I see millions of dollars chucked into a library, I'm trying to weigh that up against each other. I understand that what we're proposing is more than a library. So it's a question and kind of a comment that maybe we think about the comms around that to make sure that it's more than just a library, and I'm sure it's already in the plan. But when I see that measure coupled with we've got to invest in libraries, it doesn't match up for me.
Yeah, good point. I think the relevant teams have taken note of that. Really good point. That's all from you, Kim?
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Kia ora, thank you. Community Board Member Black.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I would like to also reiterate comments made by Kim, and also continue on the thread of discussion from the urban development regarding comms feedback and monitoring. And I've spoken to Sean about this recently as well, and some of the feedback that I have is that...
Sorry, just making sure there's a question
yeah,
in
there
this.
is.
Yeah, perfect.
To actually get my drains cleaned outside my place because there's surface flooding, I put in 4 service requests over a period of 7 months, and when it did eventually get cleaned this last week, they said that hadn't been serviced since 2015. So my questions are twofold here. Is one, how can we get comms back to the individuals so that what we actually say in our report, how well we're doing, is actually reflective to the actual people on the ground? And two, our monitoring, how come that probably there's all the drains down my street causing flooding haven't been cleaned out for 8 years, and we still think that we're actually doing okay in regards to our infrastructure? There's a lot of our drains down that street are 40 to 50 years old, I've been told, and one of them's collapsing. So do we really actually know that this report is accurate on the ground? Those are my questions.
I'll pass this to Sean, but I think that there's probably some of those details we can take offline in regards to specific service requests and the like. But yeah, I'll pass to Sean, and just mindful of time as well. Yeah. Oh, getting there. Cool.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Simon. Yeah, so we have had a brief discussion, and happy to go back directly and follow up on the specifics around that particular incident. But we do have an audit process where we follow up with our contractor and ensure they are doing the work that they do. Now, I don't know in terms of the timeframes you're talking, those would be significantly outside the normal in terms of having a drain that hasn't been cleaned since then. So happy to go back and chase it up, but there is an audit process there. We're actually audited by NZTA in terms of our delivery in the transport sector, and they include both the technical audit, which is where they go out onto the ground and actually inspect the network, and they also include a financial one, which looks at how we're delivering and spending their money in terms of the contracts that we run. So, but again, happy to follow that up. There is also, we have been talking about an improvement around service requests and having that closed out loop system.
Yeah.
And Janice might be able to talk to that.
Depending on how customer inquiries land with us, there are a number of different processes that they follow to be able to get to the point where they are executed. And some of those involve quite manual elements to that process. So at the moment, a closeout back to a requester to say this has been completed is not a consistent part of our process. It's an obvious gap and something that we're taking a look at. But because of the number of different systems in its broadest sense, not just technology systems that we have in place, won't necessarily be an easy solution, but we're taking a look at it, and you can expect to hear more from us.
Thank you. That's great.
Cool, thanks Simon. So we've just got Councillor Pravanov and Councillor Wilson, and then we're going to close questions there because there's been quite a lengthy session for questions. So Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, through the chair. In response to council requests, in here it talks about being responded to, and I know I've raised this before, being responded to and being resolved are very different, but the being resolved component of it is not included, and I'm not sure whether Janice has just explained why, but could I please have an understanding of why it's only reported as being responded to, which could be, I've got your email.
Yeah, I might pass to Janice, but it's probably just what she's just said then, really.
Yeah, I'm not sure
Around
which
closing the loop.
measure you're talking about, Councillor, but generally the KPI or the performance measure will be response time, because often it's very difficult. Resolution for, say, a flooding incident would be potentially, you could be talking about a 2 or 3 year time frame in terms of capital works to improve that. So the majority, again, it's specific to the KPI, will require a response, and a lot of them we can respond and resolve, but there are those that we can't actually resolve. So that's the current system that we use in terms of reporting, and it's linked to the DIA, I think, put out some non-financial benchmarking reporting that we're required to do, and a lot of those are specific to responsiveness.
Thank you. So a follow-up question then, through the chair, can I flag that when we look at the our targets next year in the long-term plan, that we look at this item, please?
Yep.
That's my first question.
Over the next, yeah, definitely.
So I just wanted to follow up on with a question with some of the comments that Kim made in relation to resource consents. And I've heard from Mr. Jefferson that it's often the quality of the application that that is received. So I'm aware of a situation where it's taken 4 years for a resource consent to be issued, and in year 3 they were asked to provide a report of some wildlife.
Hey,
That was
Jocelyn,
done. I have a question.
Okay, yep. I'm just thinking
and
it
then-
sounds quite specific. I'm wondering if we can take it offline, but
So they were asked to, in year 3, they were asked to do that. In year 4, when that was completed, they were then asked to provide another report on some more wildlife. I am wondering if there is any options to streamline this process far better so that the application forms have all the information in them that are going to be required for the applicant to answer, sorry.
yeah, I think probably that's one we can also take offline. I think James has got that noted down, but if we could, maybe yourself and James could connect following the
well, I suppose I
because it is related to quite a specific area.
Yeah, but saying that, I often hear that it's the quality of the information provided by the applicant, and I'm not sure whether that's because there's questions that aren't included in the forms or whether, and to me it's about, and I've been, I used to work in this area, so to me, if the information is not there to start off with, you don't accept the application.
Yeah, sure.
So to me, there's a whole lot of processing stuff in there that, you know, could help.
Yeah, we'll pass to the
Okay,
Chief Executive
thank you.
for a quick comment, and then Councillor Wilson after that.
Thanks. I'm just going to come back to the report, which covers at a relatively high level a large number of things that we do for council. More than happy to talk to you about those individual instances where you think there is something wrong. We process hundreds of resource consents, and we find that the ones that we constantly are talking about are the ones that people aren't happy with in how we've processed those consents, which is normal. People don't thank us for what we do, and we don't expect that. But could I ask, as we work through this report, which covers everything that we do, that we are just cognizant of what it is that we are looking at? I'm happy to be challenged. I'm happy to take the questions. But I just think when we look at the audience that we've got, the document that you've got in front of you, if we could please be cognizant of that.
Yeah, really useful reminder, and kind of lifting our eyes up above some of those issues which for sure exist on the ground. But what we're talking about here is, a summary of performance over the last period. So that's what we're here to talk about and ask questions on. So thanks for that reminder, Councillor Wilson, and then we'll move to debate.
No, I'll save it for my 20-minute speech I've got planned.
Hope that's sarcastic. Cool. Can we have someone please to move the recommendations?
Yep.
Councillor Kirby, seconded Councillor Wilson. Right of introduction, Councillor Kirby. Waved. Anyone would like to contribute to debate? Councillor Wilson.
20 minutes starts now. So just a quick response to Kim. I think an observation here. I think one of the reasons that the library level of satisfaction is as it is because we actually have the most brilliant library staff in the country. And I've visited libraries all around New Zealand. Our libraries overall are just exceptional. They really are exceptional. And notwithstanding the fact they've had some fairly trying circumstances to deal with in Waikanae, the part of the level of satisfaction, I think, is that there's an anticipation of what's coming as well in Waikanae. If you just left people and said, well, that's as good as it's going to get for you, I think it would take a dive. So there's some anticipation around what's going to happen, and it seems to be happening quite well. The other one I'm aware of, having been in a number of different roles over the years, is who's responsible for what. I'll give you some brief examples, like gravel in the rivers, for instance. That if you want to get people riled up, just raise the subject of gravel in rivers. And so it's easy for people to go, well, that's Kapiti Coast, what the hell are they doing? And it's a Greater Wellington thing. Similarly, like with the Mangoni stream and the flooding. So if you look at the bits that the public are already getting wound up about, that's a good one. So whose responsibility is that? And GW have made an art form out of saying it's KCDC. So we need to deal with that about, so actually whose responsibility is it? And so that the public are aware of these things. So a clarification of roles. Another good example was with the debacle of the main road through Waikanae. Now, the Kapiti Council came in for all sorts of flack, and it actually wasn't, I'm not being an apologist for council, but that was waka kotahi, cut and dried, it really was. But that's not how the public necessarily see it. They go, well, it's Waikanae, what are you people doing about it? So I think when we do these things, I think it's really important that it's clear what we can take responsibility for, and we can take responsibility for things that we can do something about. But one of our roles, of course, is advocacy to those who it is their job. So hold it in terms of using Darren's term of holding feet to the fire, we've got to make sure it's the right feet, right? So and particularly on those really contentious issues. I think this council has been really good at putting its hand up and saying, yep, that's us, we got that wrong, here's our processes for putting it right. So as long as we keep going down that track, the public trust will be very high.
Cool. Thanks, Councillor Wilson. Community Board Member Black.
Again, thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I'd like to take on the comments that Darren has made. From what I see, I would like to express my gratitude to the council staff. We're in good financial hands, we've got good operational hands, and I feel like I've been heard as a representative. So I'd just like to relay that back to everyone.
Thanks, Simon, and completely echo those words. Mayor Holborough.
Thank you, and thank you for this excellent report. We've got so much going on, as Darren's just said. I'd just like to point to page 96 of councillor agendas, and I'd just like to say that I'm quite pleased with that little graph. It's still not where it should be, but it looks like the worm has turned. Councillors will know. It's our overall satisfaction. It hasn't. Both of those measures haven't gone up since Q4 2021.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you're right. That's something to celebrate.
That's
sure.
not something to celebrate yet, but shows that we're potentially on the right track.
Yeah, sure. And the fact that we're on the right track is cause to just keep going in the same direction. 100%. Thanks. Deputy Mayor Kirby.
This is my right of reply, so then we can go.
Yeah, great. Awesome.
I'll echo the other sentiments around the table. I found this report extremely helpful, just to look at, one, to be reminded of the breadth of work that this council undertakes and the quality of the work that we do overall. So thank you to all of the staff who have been involved in producing this report, and it encourages me. I look forward to the one at the end of the year, which hopefully will show that worm and continue on an upward trajectory. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Kirby. I'm aware Kim is online and might have a couple of closing comments as well before we move to a vote. So Kim, I'll just use discretion to pass to you.
Kia ora, yeah, just to say thanks to the team around the table for the time I've sat in this forum. There's definitely been a shift, there's definitely been listening, there's definitely been ideas taken on board to provide better advice and, continuous improvement and things like that. So it's a great report, and it's a great indication of things to come. Still not there yet, and it's always tweaking, like James said, continuous improvement, but it's a real credit to the changing ways that both staff and councillors have been working together, in my opinion. So, yeah, hats off to you. Good work.
Oh, kia ora, Kim, and same to you. Good work all round. Nigel's put on the crown honorarily. We should include appointed members as also being able to be appointed councillor or elected member of the month too. To consider that. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so that's been moved by Deputy Mayor Kirby, seconded Councillor Wilson. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you so much, Cheryl and Jing, for being at the table. And yeah, for the excellent report. Thank you. Now inviting up Mike Mendonça for item 8.4, Mahara Gallery OPEX resolution report back. And again, just reminding people that if we can be succinct in our questions and also contributions to debate, that would be great. We're at 12 o'clock. Let's try and be done by 12:30 if we can. Kia ora, Mike, over to you.
Kia ora, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, councillors. Just a reminder, this report refers to a specific resolution that was made in the last triennium. There are still issues around the operating expenditure for Mahara Galleries. Mahara Gallery. That's not the subject of today's discussion. It's very much back to a resolution that the previous council made around us reporting back with some findings around what had happened and why we got to the situation where there was not sufficient OPEX in the budget for Mahara Gallery. This brief report, just seeks to report back on that, acknowledging that there are still some issues that will come to you through the long-term plan for the operating expenditure of the gallery. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Kia ora, thank you, Mike. And as Mike's mentioned, this will be a conversation through the long-term plan, so just questions specifically on the contents of the report would be welcomed. Councillor Halliday.
Thank you, through the chair. I had two questions, and Mike, you just answered the first one. So this will obviously be coming back for discussion through the long-term plan process. The other one that talks to the next tranche of Better Off funding. I just wanted some clarity around that, because I was under the impression that our new Prime Minister had withdrawn that second tranche of Better Off funding. I just wanted to get some clarity around what our perception of where we're at in that space.
That's correct, Councillor. This report's been sitting on the back burner for some months now, so that particular sentence is out of date.
No troubles at all. Thank you very much.
Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you. Thank you very much for bringing this report to the table. So, in the findings, it says that the operating costs weren't identified through the long-term plan process. My question is could you provide some clarity around the relationship, I think it's of the trust, the Mahara Gallery Trust, and KCDC, and in terms of whether, I suppose why has this gap occurred in terms of identifying or not identifying the shortfall, and why it wasn't picked up and put into the long-term plan?
So between the Trust and officers in constructing the previous long-term plan, so the current long-term plan, a pure oversight on behalf of both parties has just slipped through the cracks, which I think is acknowledged in the report, Councillor. And none of the people who were around at the time are still with us, which is another complexity for us.
But I think also too, there are elected members on that trust as well, or have been, they are elected members as well on that trust.
I think Sean might.
Oh yeah, we'll pass to Sean. Yeah, but we're probably getting a bit bogged down.
Thank you. I think probably being the only one of few people that were around through that first one in terms of around the senior leadership table. I do recall at the time prior LTPs having an allowance for additional operating costs in there, but through, I guess, the financial programming and the changes in delivery dates that were happening relatively regularly with regard to the gallery, it was really an oversight, I think, from an officer's perspective, not putting that funding back in to the LTP to match the delivery date for the project, because at the time there was a fair bit of uncertainty about when it would be opened and when it would be operational. So funding was pushed out, and I think it was just pushed out to the extent that it actually got pushed out of the LTP.
Thank you. No further questions.
Councillor Wilson.
Yep. I wanted to commend the honesty and transparency of this. Actually, this is normally everybody wants to hide under the rock, but in this case, we've lifted it up and had a good look. Not for me to repudiate the decisions made by a former council or the processes of that, but I think this is a really good example of what we were just talking about earlier, about, it's the old putting right that counts. I think this acknowledges that there's some gaps and that we've got a process for filling them. So it's not even a question. It's just
Would you like
statement.
to move?
Yeah, absolutely.
Considering there are no other questions.
Yeah, move.
Yeah, cool. A seconder, Councillor Kirby. I'll take that as your right of introduction.
It was.
If you don't mind. Any debate? Mayor Holbrook.
Yeah, just to reiterate what Mr. Mallon has said. This was identified, but I think that time frame with the project being pushed out and then suddenly happening, kind of against all odds, I think kind of took everybody by surprise. But no excuses, and this report doesn't make any excuses. It was an oversight by everybody not to keep that funding in, and also not to identify the quantum of the funding that was going to be required. So I think that identifies that, and there's certainly learnings from that as well. And I know that Councillor Cooper in particular has been talking about making sure that we identify increased operating costs as well as capital items when we do projects. So it's something we're aware of as a council, and something that we'll certainly be keeping an eye on.
And great that the report back reflects that very learning that we can take from the specific project. And Kim, over to you.
Your Honour, yeah, just quickly, just to reiterate what Mahara's just said, if we take anything from this, we take a lesson learned and make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
It's happened. There's nothing we can do about it now.
Yeah.
We just move on. But yeah, a good lesson to be had, and nice to see that it's on the table and we're just putting our hands up.
Awesome, thank you. Councillor Halliday.
Appreciate this as a report about the process, and just reiterating the learnings we're taking from that.
Awesome. Right of reply, Councillor Wilson.
Just that having earlier stated that I really hate the use of the term learnings, and I was the first one to use it, and now it seems to be in common currency.
Look
Don't
what
ever
you've
let me say.
done.
Don't ever let me say
We're
it again.
creating a learning
Yeah.
culture.
Just
great.
Just one thing I will say in relation to this paper
learning pit.
is, apart from the fact that it's really transparent, it's honest about the process. What it's also done is it's moved us into a space where, and the gallery itself, the enormous progress that they've made, have allowed us, I think, as a council to have a conversation about, about funding and future funding, and now that obviously more we can see the actual value of the project itself and what it's going to add to Kapiti. So I just think those conversations are going to they'll be easier to have now. That's me.
Cool, thank you for those succinct contributions, everyone. That was very efficient. That's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Thank you so much, Mike. Awesome. Alrighty, so item number 9, confirmation of minutes. 9.1, any concerns regarding the minutes that we have in front of us to consider? Can I have a mover that those minutes be accepted as a true and accurate record? Councillor Wilson, seconded Councillor Warwick. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. And we now move into public excluded. So can I have someone that moves? We do that. Mayor Holborough, can we have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Kirby. Yeah, right of intro. Waved. All right, perfect. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Just turn the live streaming off. Thank you. Cool, we're fine. Perfect.